Welcome to Difficult Conversations with Glen and Grace. Today we're dissecting why so many millennials and Gen Z are turning away from organized religion.
Absolutely. It's a pretty striking shift. What do you think is driving this mass rejection?
Well, to start off, the data is pretty stark. Pew Research shows around 44% of millennials are religious nones, and with Gen Z, it's even more dramatic. Gallup's survey even shows church membership dropping below 50% for the first time in over 8 decades.
That's huge. It's like a flood rather than just a trickle of change, right?
Exactly. And when you look closer, there are several factors at play. One key element is institutional hypocrisy and scandal.
Right. So we're talking about scandals like sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, televangelist fraud, and those mega-church gaffes where preachers live in mansions while preaching sacrifice.
Yes, spot on.
Right?
For a generation that values transparency and accountability, seeing those contradictions is a massive deal breaker. It's like you're looking at an institution that shouts one message and practices another.
Absolutely. And I think that really ties into another reason: politics in the pews. When churches align so closely with political agendas, it forces young people to choose between their values and their faith.
Yep, exactly. Many young people are saying, if my church supports policies that harm immigrants or, restrict LGBTQ rights, then how can I stay? It's not just a spiritual disconnect, it's a moral one.
It almost feels like a clash between what they're preached and the reality they see in politics.
Right? And then there's the entire impact of science, education, and the internet. Millennials were the first generation to come of age online, and Gen Z practically has a smartphone glued to their hand from birth. When you have that constant access to global perspectives and academic research, it becomes tough to swallow traditional claims without questioning them.
So you're saying that when faced with scientific evidence or historical criticism, many young folks just aren't buying what they're being told?
Exactly. And it's not just about science, it's also about how religious leaders often seem defensive or vague when these questions are raised. It leaves a sour taste, especially when you're raised to value clear answers and facts.
And that defensive attitude can really alienate someone who's craving an honest conversation, can it?
Absolutely. That brings us to cultural shifts and value dissonance. Millennials and Gen Z are incredibly diverse and socially conscious. They want their spiritual spaces to reflect values like inclusion, empathy, and social justice. Values that many traditional churches have lagged behind on.
Yeah, no doubt. It's almost like there's a disconnect between the church's doctrines and the evolving moral compass of today's youth.
Exactly. And then there's this idea that spirituality isn't dead. It's evolving. These generations are exploring mindfulness, meditation, Eastern philosophies, and even nature-based rituals as alternatives to organized religion.
That's interesting because it shows that it's not a lack of desire for connection or meaning, it's just a desire for a different kind of spiritual expression.
Exactly right. Think of it like this. It's like everyone gets to remix their own beliefs. It's like creating a custom playlist. They're picking and choosing what resonates with them instead of sticking to a preset dogmatic tune.
I love that analogy. It really captures the DIY spirituality vibes so many are talking about today.
And another factor, which might be a bit ironic, is the lack of authentic community. Churches were once a hub for community connection, but now many feel they're missing that genuine, unfiltered space to be who they truly are.
Yeah, especially when doubts are shunned instead of welcomed. How can someone truly connect when their questions are seen as a weakness?
Exactly. The environment feels more like a set of rituals and rules rather than a space for honest dialogue. That, combined with religious trauma from things like purity culture and homophobia, has led many to walk away.
That makes sense. I have to respectfully challenge one point here. While I get the idea of trauma being a disconnect, don't you think some people might argue that overcoming those hurdles is part of a deeper faith journey?
That's a fair point, and I do see where that argument comes from. But for many young people, the pain and the trauma are so deep that the journey feels more like deconstruction rather than growth. They're dismantling things they were taught without having a foundation that feels authentic.
True. It's like the foundation crumbles under a weight of unmet promises and hurt, making it almost impossible to rebuild trust.
Yes, and it's not about rejecting spirituality outright. They're simply looking to rebuild on their own terms, more honestly, more fluidly, and more inclusively.
So, in a way, it's a turning point. It's not the end of spiritual seeking, but more a transformation of what spirituality means in a modern context.
Exactly. We've seen some religious leaders trying to listen and respond by creating more inclusive communities. They're ditching rigid dogma and embracing vulnerability. It's kind of like they're saying, let's start with your questions, not our answers.
And to me, that seems a promising path forward. Building bridges instead of walls.
Absolutely. The next generation doesn't want an old-fashioned sermon. They are craving a conversation that respects nuance and, rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all narrative.
It's really a call for authenticity. But do you think this trend might eventually lead to a resurgence in more evolved forms of organized spirituality?
That's the million-dollar question. Some believe we're witnessing the beginning of a new kind of faith, one that thrives on personal meaning, community, and dialogue. Others
Interesting.
worry it could signal the outright collapse of large institutions.
I've seen arguments suggesting that while traditional structures might fade away, new, more dynamic communities will emerge to fulfill that space.
Right? And what's exciting is that these conversations are prompting those who still identify with organized religion to rethink how they connect with their congregants.
It's like a wake-up call, really. A chance for a reset so the focus shifts from rigid dogma to genuine, empathetic dialogue.
Exactly. And while the statistics and trends might seem alarming at first glance, they also highlight a hunger for something more real. It's proof that despite the challenges, spirituality is adapting, becoming more personalized and fluid.
Yeah, absolutely. And that evolution isn't just about abandoning the past. It's about, reconstructing it into something that honors modern values, isn't it?
Precisely. It's a reimagining. Rather than clinging to outdated frameworks, many are embracing uncertainty and crafting a faith that reflects their lived experiences.
There's a sense of freedom in that, isn't there? The freedom to explore, question, and even remix your beliefs.
Definitely. And in our conversation today, it's clear, business as usual just isn't cutting it anymore. We're all, in essence, looking for spaces where integrity meets truth, a conversation, not a sermon.
That's a powerful insight. Whether you're leaving the faith of your upbringing or selectively building a new spiritual path, these changes really underscore the importance of honest dialogue.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, the key takeaway is this. Engaging in difficult conversations, like the ones we're having, might just be the bridge needed to heal what a lot of rigid dogma has broken over the years.
Well said. Thanks for unpacking these layers with me. It's been enlightening to hear the many factors, from institutional ethics to evolving personal values, that are reshaping faith.
I appreciate the dialogue. Let's keep these conversations going, creating space for all viewpoints, and recognizing that while traditions may transform, the quest for meaning remains timeless.
Absolutely. For anyone out there navigating their own spiritual journey, remember, your questions and experiences are welcome here. Let's build bridges, not walls.
Thanks for tuning in today. Keep the conversation honest, keep questioning, and let's continue to redefine what spirituality can be.
Until next time, stay curious and keep the dialogue alive.